Man, I don't know how to explain this, but if you're listening to this, I'm assuming you know what it's like to have something real messed up happen in your life. I swear it all started like any other regular day, but the shit that followed? Man, I still can't wrap my head around it. So, I married this girl. Yeah, she wasn't some supermodel or anything, but we connected, you know? She was different. Quiet, maybe a little weird, but hell, who isn't, right? We just clicked. Honestly, I loved her. Her name's Laura. We had a normal life, or at least I thought so at the time. But, man, it didn't take long for things to start feeling off. Like, it wasn't even that obvious at first. You know how sometimes you just feel a little off about something, but you can't put your finger on it? Yeah, that was the vibe I started getting after we got married. She started acting strange. At first, I thought I was just overthinking it. She'd do little things, like avoiding mirrors. Not in some, I don't like the way I look way, but like she was scared to see her own reflection. And bro, it's not like she was hiding anything either. I mean, she was never a model, but she was, decent, right? Still, I couldn't shake the feeling something wasn't right. Then the late night stuff started happening. Like, at first, it was just small stuff. She'd go to bed super early, like before 9 p.m. and lock the bedroom door behind her. Now, I didn't think much of it at first. Some people like their alone time, right? But after a few weeks, it got weirder. I'd be watching TV in the living room, and she'd come out of the bedroom at like midnight. She wouldn't say a word, just stand there in the doorway staring at me. Then she'd go back to bed like nothing happened. And I'm just sitting there like, what the fuck? Come on! I started asking her about it, but she always brushed it off. She'd be like, oh, just tired or had a weird dream. Like, come on. It started messing with my head. I was wondering, is she sleepwalking? What's going on? But I didn't want to seem crazy, so I kept quiet about it. Then, one night, it happened. I woke up at like 2 a.m. for some reason, and she wasn't in bed. Now, I'm not a light sleeper, but this time I noticed. The door to the bedroom was unlocked. I get up, kind of pissed off because I'm thinking, what the hell is she doing now? I go into the living room and holy shit, there she is. But like, she wasn't just sitting there. She was standing by the window staring outside, like really staring. Almost like she was waiting for something. Laura? I said. And it was weird, like I didn't even know what tone to use. I swear to God, when she turned around to look at me, it felt like she wasn't the same person. Her eyes were like too wide, and her face didn't look the same either. Not in a she's had a bad day kind of way, but like different. Like she wasn't even her. I couldn't put it into words, but it wasn't my wife standing in front of me. What the hell, babe? I asked, my heart just pounding. She didn't answer. She smiled at me, but it wasn't the kind of smile I remembered. It was wrong. Then she just said, I'm sorry. Go back to bed, okay? And as weird as it sounds, I couldn't argue with her. I don't know why. I don't know if it was the way she said it or the way her smile looked, but I just turned around and went back to bed. But I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about her eyes, the smile, the way she looked like someone else. The next day, when I asked her about it, she acted like nothing happened, like it was just a normal night. But man, I don't know. Something was off. Something was way off. I can't explain it yet, but after that, everything started to change. And it wasn't in a good way. It was after that night that things started getting real strange. At first, I thought maybe I was just imagining things, right? I mean, I was a little freaked out, sure, but people do weird shit sometimes. Maybe I was overthinking it. But over the next few days, it wasn't just little things anymore. No, it started to feel like something else. Something was wrong. Laura started changing, and I'm not talking about her personality or the way she talked, though that did shift too. Nah, this was deeper. Her appearance. It was like she wasn't her anymore. She'd wake up in the morning like she always did. But I swear, her face looked different. Not different in a she's getting older way, but different like something was hiding underneath her skin, waiting to come out. It wasn't noticeable at first, but it was there if you looked close enough. Her skin looked a little too pale, her eyes a little too wide, her lips a little too full. I thought maybe I was seeing things, but when I looked at her closely, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. At night, though, that's when it got bad. Man, I'm telling you, I don't know how to explain this, but I'd wake up in the middle of the night and she wasn't in bed. I'd go to the living room and there she'd be, sitting on the couch with her back to me. She'd always be staring out the window, just staring, and her face would look different. I'm not talking about like she's having a bad night different. I mean different. She'd be glowing. Like her skin would have this soft, eerie light around it. Almost like moonlight, but not. And it wasn't just the glow. Her eyes, man, her eyes weren't even the same color anymore. They'd shift from dark brown to this golden color, almost like something unnatural. I kept thinking, this isn't real. I'm just losing it. But every time I'd get close enough, her face, I couldn't look away. Her smile would be so wide, like it was stretching beyond what should be possible. One night I decided to try something. I figured, okay, maybe if I can catch her at the right moment, I can get some kind of answer out of her. So I stayed awake, right? I waited, watching her slowly get out of bed. The moment she left the room, I followed her, creeping behind her in the dark. I watched her head to the living room like usual. She sat down on the couch, just staring at the window, like she was waiting for something. I stepped closer, my heart pounding in my chest. "Laura," I whispered, barely a breath. She didn't respond, but I could feel her attention shift towards me. Slowly, she turned her head, and that smile came back. But this time, there was something else in her eyes. Something hungry. I took a step back, chills running down my spine. Her face, man, her face. It wasn't just glowing. It was beautiful. And I don't mean that in the way I used to think about her. It was unnatural, beautiful. Like she was some kind of goddess or something. Her skin was perfect, flawless. Her hair was longer, more golden than I remembered, like it was made of light. And those eyes? Shit, they were glowing now. A bright, piercing gold that made me want to look away, but I couldn't. "Come here," she said, her voice so smooth, like honey dripping from her lips. I didn't want to go, but my feet started moving, like I was under some kind of spell. The closer I got, the more real she felt. I didn't even question it. When I was close enough, she reached out and touched my face, and goddamn, it was like a jolt of electricity ran through my body. I froze, my heart beating so loud I thought, it would burst. "Do you love me?" she whispered. I could barely answer. I was frozen in place. I didn't know what was happening, but this wasn't the woman I married. This wasn't Laura. I tried to speak, but all I could do was nod. "Of course. I love you, babe," I managed to say, my voice shaking. She smiled wider. "Then show me." And that's when everything snapped. Without warning, she pulled me close, and I swear to God she kissed me. But it wasn't just a kiss. No, this was different. Her lips were cold, and when they touched mine, it felt like something was draining out of me. something vital. I tried to pull away, but her grip on me was like iron. I couldn't move. I couldn't even breathe. My chest felt tight. My vision, blurry. It felt like I was sinking into her, losing myself. I thought I was going to pass out. Finally, I broke away. I don't know how, but I managed to tear myself free from her grasp. I stumbled back, gasping for air. She just sat there, smiling at me, that same perfect smile. "Don't worry, babe," she said, her voice like velvet. "You'll get used to it." And that's when I realized this wasn't my wife anymore. This wasn't just some weird phase or something I could explain away. Whatever she was now, she wasn't human, and I had no idea how to stop it. I didn't know what the hell was going on. I mean, at first, I thought I was losing my mind. I kept telling myself, maybe it's just stress. Maybe I'm just seeing things and everything's fine. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. Whatever was happening, it was real. And it was getting worse. After that night, I couldn't sleep. I was scared to close my eyes because every time I did, I'd see her face. Her glowing, perfect face. Every time I opened my eyes, she was there, always staring, always waiting for something. I couldn't get away from her. It wasn't just the way she looked, though. It was the way she acted. She wasn't the same person. She'd do things I couldn't explain, like she'd sit for hours staring into nothing, completely still. Her hands would twitch, like she was controlling them, trying to keep them from doing something. And then, she'd speak in these strange whispers. It wasn't English. It was like she was talking to someone, but no one was there. Sometimes she'd go days without eating, without saying a word. I'd try to talk to her, try to snap her out of whatever the hell was going on, but it never worked. She'd just look at me with those golden eyes like I was the one who was crazy. Then, on the fourth night, I saw something that made my blood run cold. I woke up again in the middle of the night. This time, though, it was different. I didn't hear her moving around, didn't see her walking around in that trance-like state. It was too quiet. I got out of bed, my mind racing. I went to the living room and, holy shit, I couldn't believe what I saw. She was sitting on the couch, but this time it was different. It wasn't like before. Her face, goddamn, her face looked like it had been transformed. She looked beautiful, more than ever before, but it wasn't real. Her skin was perfect, like porcelain. Her hair was long, flowing, and so bright it looked like it was made of sunlight. And those eyes, those fucking eyes, they were pure gold now, like she wasn't even human anymore. I froze, just staring at her, unsure of what to do. She didn't even notice me standing there. She was just sitting there, staring straight ahead, like she was waiting for something, or someone. And then, without looking at me, she spoke. "You should have known, babe." I froze. My heart skipped a beat. I had no idea what she meant, but I was starting to get the feeling that I didn't want to know. "Known what?" I asked, my voice shaky. She turned slowly to face me, and when she did, I felt like I was going to collapse. Her smile was the most disturbing thing I'd ever seen. It wasn't just a smile. It was a grin, like she was enjoying something at my expense. "You should have known that you weren't the only one," she said, her voice so smooth it sent shivers down my spine. "You're not the one I wanted." I tried to speak, but my throat was dry. My heart was pounding, and I felt like I couldn't breathe. "What do you mean?" I finally managed to get out, my voice barely a whisper. She stood up slowly, almost like she was floating, her movements so smooth and unnatural. "Look at me, babe," she said, her voice like a sickening lullaby. "I'm beautiful now. Don't you think so?" I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what was happening. My mind was racing, trying to piece together what the hell was going on, but nothing made sense anymore. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, the words barely leaving my mouth. She stepped closer, her smile widening with each step, and goddamn, I couldn't look away from her. I didn't want to, but I couldn't stop myself. "I'm not yours anymore," she whispered, her face inches from mine. "You never were." And that's when it hit me. This wasn't her, this wasn't my wife, this was something else. Something that was pretending to be her, pretending to be the woman I loved. And then she said it. The words that would haunt me for the rest of my life. "You never saw me for what I really was. But I'm not just yours anymore." Before I could react, she was gone. Just like that. One second she was standing in front of me, and the next, she was gone. I didn't know where she went, but I didn't want to find out. I stayed up all night, too scared to sleep, too scared to even move. The next morning, everything was back to normal. Or at least, it seemed that way. Laura was there. She was her again. The pale skin, the brown eyes, the slightly tired look. She acted like nothing had happened, like the night before was just some weird dream, but I knew. I knew that whatever the hell had happened was still there, and it wasn't over. It was just beginning. Days passed and I kept my distance. I stayed in the house, but I didn't want to be close to Laura. It wasn't her anymore. Not really. She looked like her, but everything else was different. Her smile, her laugh, the way she spoke. It all felt wrong, like a mask that someone else was wearing. I tried to get answers, but every time I asked her about the nights, about the strange things that had been happening, she'd just smile that same twisted smile and brush it off. "You're just tired, babe. You need to relax," she'd say. But I couldn't relax. I knew something was wrong. I could feel it deep down like a cold, heavy weight on my chest. It didn't stop. It only got worse. One night, I was alone in the living room when I heard that soft whisper. Like someone was calling my name barely above a breath. "Come here." I felt my heart race. I didn't want to follow. But my feet moved on their own, carrying me toward the living room. And there she was again, sitting in that same spot, glowing in the darkness. She was beautiful, goddamn. But it was the kind of beauty that made me feel sick. The kind of beauty that you can't look away from. But you know it's wrong. She didn't say anything this time. She just looked at me, those glowing eyes piercing through the darkness. I could feel the air around me shift. It felt like I was suffocating, like the room was closing in. But I couldn't move, my body was frozen. Why are you doing this to me?" I finally asked, my voice breaking. She smiled again. It wasn't a normal smile. It was something darker, something predatory. "Because I can," she said, softly. "Because I don't belong to you anymore. I never did." I tried to turn around, but I couldn't. I was rooted to the spot. My heart pounded in my chest, and I felt this overwhelming sense of dread, like something was coming for me, something I couldn't escape. "Don't go," she said, almost pleading now, her voice dropping into something more familiar, more desperate. "Don't leave me. You're the only one who can understand." But then, something else happened. I felt her presence behind me, even though she was still sitting on the couch. I didn't want to look, but my body couldn't resist. Slowly, I turned my head. And what I saw... My God, I can't even explain it. It was like she had split in two. Her real form was standing there behind me, tall, dark, and twisted, with a face that was a grotesque mockery of the woman I loved. Her body wasn't human anymore. It was like something from a nightmare. Skin stretched too tight, eyes wide and empty, a mouth full of sharp teeth that grinned impossibly wide. I tried to scream, but the sound was stuck in my throat. I couldn't move. I couldn't escape. The real Laura, the thing, leaned forward and whispered in my ear, "I told you I'm not yours. I never was. You never saw me for what I really am." I tried to fight back, to scream, to run, but the moment I moved, she vanished. When I woke up the next morning, everything was normal again. She was there, sitting on the couch, looking just like the woman I married. Her face was pale, her eyes brown, her smile sweet, like nothing had happened, like everything was fine. But I knew that it wasn't, and I knew then that I had to leave. I had to get out before whatever the hell this was swallowed me whole. I packed my bags, my hands shaking as I shoved clothes into a suitcase. Laura, whatever she was now, just sat there watching me, that strange smile never leaving her face. She didn't stop me, didn't say a word. She just watched. When I was at the door, ready to leave, she finally spoke, and her voice chilled me to my core. "You can run, but you can't hide," she said softly. "I'll find you. And when I do, you'll wish you'd stayed." I slammed the door behind me and ran. I didn't look back. I didn't care where I was going as long as it was far away from her. But I know that this isn't over. Whatever the hell she is, whatever the hell that thing is, it's still out there, watching, waiting for me to make a mistake. And one day, when I least expect it, she'll come for me. She'll find me. And this time, I won't be able to run.